Prime Minister, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
I'd like to begin with an issue that has been brewing here for pretty much 3.5 years now, and that's Caledonia. Now, as you know, natives took over, occupied a project that was in Caledonia in February of 2006. And since then, the people of Six Nations, the people of Caledonia, have been living in turmoil. There have been threats against some people's lives. Their lives have been disrupted. What is your government going to do to finally bring an end to this?
Well, it's a very difficult situation, and I wish I had some easy answers. Obviously, ourselves and the Government of Ontario have been involved in ongoing negotiations to try and bring about a peaceful resolution to this. I think the first priority of all governments has been to avoid violence. You know, I don't have any easy answers for this. The discussions keep going. We've put some offers before the First Nation, but as yet have not had any resolution of this issue.
But it has to come to an end, and if anybody in Canada can bring it to an end, it's you.
Well, I think it ultimately, if it's a law enforcement issue, it's ultimately the law enforcement responsibility of the Ontario Provincial Police. But as I say, we've been working with the Ontario government, which has wanted to avoid a violent situation, so we've been trying to seek a peaceful resolution.
I'm going to push it back on you. It's been 3.5 years that this has been ongoing. People, what are we waiting on? I mean, what is it going to take? We've had violence.
I honestly don't know. You know, part of the difficulty is there's a lot of dispute within the First Nation about really who's in charge and who the leadership is. We've tried ourselves and the provincial government, I know, to put some other economic development projects there, but we do understand that this is very disruptive to the people in that area.
Okay. Let's move on to something that's a little different, and that is the economy.
Yeah.
It is on the rebound. We're seeing the jobless rate actually decline. The recession appears to be over, which is a good thing for you because it's coming on the heels of a performance you made recently, last week, at the NAC. And I want to talk to you about that because since last week...
Could I just first talk about the economy?
Sure, go ahead.
Just to maybe correct you a bit, today's job numbers are very good news. It's an improvement. But I'm cautioning the Canadian public not to declare victory quite yet. We still think the next few months we could see some up and downs. Obviously, things are better than they've been. But we continue to see significant job losses in the U.S. And as long as our major export market has that problem, I don't think it's clear sailing. So we're encouraged by the news, but we've still got, we still got to keep our eye on the ball here in the year going forward.
Well, let's tie that into the recent polls. Your party is increasing in popularity. Do you think that the fact that you have been focusing on the economy is having any impact on the popularity of the Conservatives?
Well, you know, I don't tend to put much stock in polls when we're behind, so I'm not going to put much stock in them when we're ahead. I think what people expect right now, not just from the government, from all parties in Parliament, is that we will focus on the economy, focus on the major issues of the day. I think they would expect that all parties would work together to try and fix some of these problems, and I think they think that if the opposition doesn't agree with what we're doing, they'll suggest alternatives. And I don't think people want anybody, whether it's ourselves or the opposition, to be plunging the country into a second election in a year or the fourth election in 5 years. They want us to focus on the economy. That's what we're trying to do.
But you know, this might be a good time for an election. You're soaring in the polls. You're actually doing better in Quebec than you have since the last election. And a lot of people, I mentioned the economy, but a lot of people are looking back just as far as a week ago to what happened in Ottawa at the NAC. I want to talk about the piano. First of all, why did you do it?
Well, you know, we've been doing some jam sessions at 24 Sussex. My son took up the guitar 4 or 5 years ago, and I have a background in piano. In fact, I have grade 9 Royal Conservatory. But I hadn't played as an adult and started to play to accompany him. And then we had a few more friends over, and next my wife brought over some professional musicians and started to say to me, "You should perform sometime." And I said, "Well, I'm not good enough to do that." But she really insisted. She was the co-chair of the gala the other night, so she really pushed me hard, and Lorraine pushed me hard. And I thought to myself, I was leery about doing it. But I said, "We'll bring over the Herringbone is the name of the group, Richard, Andre, and Phil. We'll bring them over. We'll run through a couple of numbers, see what they think." They thought we could do it, and I thought to myself, even though I was reluctant, I thought to myself, look, You know, you don't get to be Prime Minister very often. You don't get a chance to do this. And if I don't try it, I'll always wonder if I should have tried.
And how did it feel?
It felt great. You know, I was pretty nervous. I have to admit, I was pretty nervous, and I was pretty relieved when it was over. But the crowd went crazy, and it was a lot of fun.
And a lot of people are saying that that is one of the reasons, in fact, one of the key reasons why your popularity is soaring. Do you think that there is a connection between the two, between the results of the polls and last week?
I don't know. As I say, I don't put much stock in polls. I think that when it comes to governance, the public wants the government to focus on the economy.
They do, but
they see us doing that. They don't see the opposition doing that.
But the biggest criticism or one of the biggest criticisms of you in government has been the fact that it's so difficult to get to know the person. And for the first time, at least I can remember, seeing the person, seeing Stephen Harper, the person. Well,
maybe. You know, I just say I don't try and explain all these things. I would just note that over the past several years, you know, we've been going up pretty steadily. I mean, there's ups and downs, but each election I've run in, I've had a little better result than the time before. So, you know, I've always thought I don't really think the population seeks a leader they necessarily love or agree with. I think they look for competence. They look that you care about what you're doing and that you're obviously not, you're working for the public and not trying to line your own pockets. And I think those are the things they look for. And at a time like this, they look for us to focus on the economy.
I think you have
That's what we're trying to do.
You have more faith in the Canadian electorate than I do. I still think
well, I have to have faith in them. They put me in office.
I still think that they want to see the human being behind all of this. I have to ask you about hockey for a little bit.
Yeah.
As you know, we're still crying in Hamilton because we didn't get our NHL team. Is there anything that the feds can do to help us?
Well, I don't know that we can. And, you know, frankly, traditionally, Canadian governments, federal governments have stayed out of professional sport. I mean, it's not a secret that I would love to see more professional NHL teams in Canada. I think Hamilton and region would be a great place for a team. My impression, and hockey is not my business, although it's my interest, my impression is that people putting a professional team here would be looking for a better facility than exists today. And that's probably the biggest hurdle. But I certainly think this area could support, you know, a top-level National Hockey League club. And I certainly conveyed that view to the owners of the NHL, but they make their decisions on business, not on politics.
And are you going to tell me finally what your favorite team is?
Well, I always, you know, I always avoid that question.
You have to pick one. You have to pick one.
Look, everybody knows I grew up in Toronto.
So is it Toronto?
And I live in Calgary now, so those are my major East and Western teams. But I always say I'll always cheer for any Canadian team that's left. And every year, ever since I've been Prime Minister, Canadian teams have been close to winning the Cup almost every single year. Not last year, but we had Calgary was close, or Edmonton was close, then Calgary was close, and Ottawa was close. But one of these days we'll get it back.
I have one last question I have to ask you, and that is from actually one of the cameramen here. And he said, now that you have my vote, just for playing a Beatles song, were you really playing the piano? And did you pick that song because it was a Ringo vocal lead and you knew it would be easier than singing a Lennon or McCartney?
It was actually the band that picked the song.
Okay.
It was actually the band that picked the song. We ran through several, but they thought, look, we've only got a week because we just put that together in a week. They think, let's take something that's got a modest vocal range that doesn't have a lot of, you know, complicated time or chord changes. And something that's fun. And you know, the whole theme of the song is, you know, you don't really know I can sing kind of theme, so it fit perfectly. And it's a great song. I mean, it's just one of those classic songs from a classic album.
And I think you did sound like Ringo.
I appreciate that. Well, I try to avoid I tend to slip into the British accent, but we try and avoid that.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.